One of the things that I'm fearful of, especially with these tariffs, if they become a long-term thing, is that it is going to increase the imports that we have coming in. And in the short term, we don't have the facilities, we don't have the manufacturing plants, all the things that we would like to have as a result of tariffs being implemented. Those aren't in place right now, right? And so in the short term, we don't have a plan B for, okay, if I don't want to go to this importer to get this good, I don't have an option in the US that's available right now. Where do I go from there? Because that's the one thing that everyone agrees on with tariffs, is that a lot of times if you're charging another country a tariff for an import, they're just going to put that cost right back onto the consumer. And so we as the people, welcome to the Home Goals Podcast, the ultimate guide for turning your home goals into a reality. I'm your host, Derek Thornton. Join us as we navigate the twists and turns of obtaining a home, where we offer expert tips, helping you avoid pitfalls, and championing your journey towards that cherished place to call home. In this week's episode, I felt like I had to take a shift from what I typically would talk about and go more into the current events that are taking place right now. With every news outlet and every channel that you turn, you're hearing one word that you probably are hearing now more than you've ever heard before in your life, and that is the word tariff, right? We have heard it constantly, incessantly, and for good reason, right? It's something that is very impactful on our economy and the way that we do business and the way that our global markets work and everything else. And so it just really has a ton of ripple effects on our economy. And so I'm going to touch briefly on just what we've noticed so far, how these things are starting to shape up, and what potential impacts it could have on the real estate industry. This is tariffs, tumult, and just the stock market crash. And I don't even want to call it a crash, because it's already, I call it the stock market roller coaster, right? Because it's just up and down and all over the place. And so we're going to kind of do our best to just walk through this and talk about what we're seeing, right? And so as the Trump administration has made very clear, they are working to bring manufacturing jobs and a lot of those industries back into the U.S. Instead of having other countries do those things for us and importing those goods, they want to bring those jobs back here. And so one of the tactics that they have used to kind of make this come to effect is by placing a tax on the imported goods, which is all that a tariff is, right? It's just a tax that is placed on those goods that are imported into our country. So from numerous different countries, right? We have so many different countries that we receive goods from, China being one of the main ones, Taiwan, all these different countries that we import goods for all different types of things, for our phones, for our building supplies, for our steel. So many different things are imported in. And that's the way that we've done it for years. And in the past, our country has tried to use similar tactics to help us be a stronger economy by introducing tariffs. And in the past, it has not proven to be successful. Now, it's usually once in a blue moon, right? Like the last one was almost 100 years ago when we implemented tariffs. And again, it did not go well. Ended up leading to what was ultimately the Great Depression. Now, I don't believe, or I'm not certain at this moment that that's what's going to be happening now. That's what's on the horizon for us now. But one thing that we have, or at least I thought we all could agree on, was that it probably isn't the best method moving forward. There's a ton of economists who have come out against this as a viable option to really help things. And we're really still trying to wrap our minds around if that is the ultimate goal or if this is just a negotiation tactic. It's uncertain at this point, right? But last week, President Trump enacted sweeping tariffs across 60 different countries, and it's something that sent shockwaves throughout the entire economy. We saw a massive dip in the stock market, one that we hadn't seen since probably 60, 70 years, in just the way that it dropped in almost a day. It was just an unheard of swing in the stock market, one that we hadn't seen. And it's something that we were still trying to wrap our minds around when he announced what it was. And so I felt like that was the market sort of responding to how they feel about tariffs, right? That was one of the glaring signs that it was going to go up. And then before we even had really time to wrap our minds around that, Trump reversed order and he eliminated or reduced a majority of those tariffs for about 60 of those countries down to about 10%. So the tariffs are still in place for all of those countries. It just was lower than what it would initially. However, he also made sure that the tariffs on China are still in place, and they're actually going back and forth now. They kept the tariffs in place on them, and then China came back and retaliated, and then we went back and retaliated against their retaliation, and now it's around 145% that we have a tariff where we're just going back and forth. And I really feel like it at its base level is almost just a game of chicken, right? Just going back and forth, seeing, okay, who's going to be the first one to quote unquote chicken out and say like, okay, we'll relent and give way to this. But China is a very big importer in there, and that could really, really impact the way that things are done in our area. You figure all the imports and the goods that we have coming in from them, it simply isn't sustainable to have a tariff that high. And so if this is, in fact, something that is going to be a long-term plan and not simply just a negotiation tactic, that is going to change the way that we do things. One of my biggest concerns is I can't remember who told it to me like this, whatever, but they basically said that I prefer to go smart instead of fast, right? Instead of just jumping into things and leaping into situations, I want to make sure I have all the facts. And that plays into my personality as well. I'm a type of person where I like to have the facts. I like to know all the potential consequences. I like to know, okay, if I am taking a risk, let me make sure that it's a calculated risk where I'm prepared for what's going to happen or what's on the horizon. And that doesn't appear to be the case with the way that a lot of these moves have been thrown into the situation. It's kind of like a strong arm technique, but instead of it just being one of the businesses that Trump would typically run, now it's the entire country that is basically having to relent to whatever these strong arm tactics may be, and it could have tremendous impacts on how things are going. When we have massive highs and lows in the market, it creates instability, and there's nothing healthy about an unstable market, right? That is just going up and down and up and down. When Trump reversed order and basically lowered all the other countries' tariffs back down to 10%, the stock market shot back up, and people were like, "Oh, this is great! This is a wonderful time." And you never want to see those massive of a swings in the stock market within a matter of days, because again, it is a sign that is an incredibly unstable market, and that is not the economy that you want to have, right? You want your economy to be the picture of stability, right? That's what you want to have, something where you're not waking up and knowing like, okay, I'm going to be rejoicing in celebration, or I may have a heart attack based on what I see on this screen, right? You want to have something that is stable, that is predictable as possible. Nothing's ever 100% predictable, but you want to have something that you can at least wrap your mind around and know, okay, I have a pretty good idea of where we stand. And so it's a lot of changes and stuff that we're trying to get used to and understand how things are going. And as far as it relates to the real estate industry, I always tell people real estate moves significantly slower than many of the other markets. You're never going to see real estate move as quickly or react as quickly as the stock market would, right? The stock market, like I said, within a matter of a week, you can have just all kinds of changes that'll make your head spin. Real estate tends to move a lot slower, and we're often typically, I'd say, like the last to find out or the last to really react to it, right? So when the Great Recession was happening, it was kind of like the housing market was the basis around that whole thing, whatever. That was kind of the last. It was one of those slow changes, right, where we start to slowly see these banks or have these loans all start to default. And like I said, it took time for us to really understand just how big of a hole the economy was in. And so nowadays we're trying to see like, okay, well, how's the housing market reacting to all the tariff news and everything like that? The truth of the matter is we just don't know at the moment, right? We can make predictions on how it could impact it, but it's been too little time for us to have a definitive answer on how it's going to impact the housing market. I mean, you figure and you think about it, we're only 3 months, we're not even a full 3 months into this administration, right? And we've already seen sweeping changes as well. And so it's going to take at least for these next 6 to 12 months for us to really get a good picture of how the market is reacting to this new presidency and all the policies that are put into place. One of the things that I'm fearful of, especially with these tariffs, if they become a long-term thing, is that it is going to increase the imports that we have coming in. And in the short term, we don't have the facilities, we don't have the manufacturing plants, all the things that we would like to have as a result of tariffs being implemented. Those aren't in place right now. Right. And so in the short term, we don't have a plan B for, okay, if I don't want to go to this importer to get this good, I don't have an option in the U.S. that's available right now. Where do I go from there? Like I said, you're either forced to pay the more expensive one or just kind of sit and wait. And so that goes into a lot of the goods and services we buy. You think about cars that are imported, right? Like I said, if it's a matter of like, okay, do I wait for the plants and everything to be built for the cars to be here so they're more cost effective for us? Or do I pay the more expensive fee with the tariffs? Because that's the one thing that everyone agrees on with tariffs is that a lot of times if you're charging another country a tariff or an import, they're just going to put that cost right back onto the consumer. And so we as the people, the U.S. citizens, we're the ones that are going to be most impacted by these tariffs that are put in place. So a lot of the goods, a lot of the services, people, you hear all these rumors, like, oh my goodness, it could cost $3,000 for an iPhone. It could cost this for it. Like we're just seeing like all the ripple effects of what could happen if these different tariffs and things go into place. And it is causing a lot of fear in the marketplace, and rightfully so, because we truly don't know where things are going to go and if this is truly something that's going to stick around. And so a lot of the supplies that are used in the building of homes, again, a lot of those supplies are imported. You think of the normal things, maybe like the lumber, or like this, the little like concrete and information that, or the resources that we use to build the homes. But there's also a lot of appliances that go into making those homes as well, right? You figure the HVAC systems, the water heaters, all these little different parts and things. And we don't even have a full understanding a lot of times when we're out about, and when I say we, I'm talking about realtors and homeowners and home sellers. A lot of times we don't have a full understanding of just how many parts of that house were imported from other countries, right? So like so many of the different things that you look at the HVAC system, right? The parts that may be used to replace that could be imported, right? And if there's tariffs on it, that's going to increase those parts. If you look at the systems that are inside of your house, all the ductwork, all these different things, there's so many things that could have an impact and a change on it. And we got to see this in real time in 2021, right? Because there was because of the worldwide pandemic that was taking place, we got to see what happens when a lot of the goods and services and different import products that we import are delayed, right? That was the big issue that we were dealing with in 2021, is that a lot of the materials that they were having imported were either A, being delayed in coming in, or B, the cost of them was rising astronomically. And so builders were having to overnight change the pricing on a house that they had. They were struggling to figure out how, and there was a lot of builders that were like, on one day, I was ready to sell the house for this price, but now if I sell it for that tomorrow, I'm going to lose my shirt on this deal, right? And so like there were a lot of builders that were reneging on the deals and saying like, hey, I can't sell the house to you for that price anymore. We're going to have to change it. There were a lot of builders who were having to delay deals much longer than normal, right? They were saying like, hey, I know we said we can close in August, but we're going to have to push that back. It could be 4 months. It could be 6 months. It could be 8 months. Could be a year. We don't know. And so it was a lot of just uncertainty and tumult that was going on during that time. And we run the risk of running into those similar situations if these tariffs are long term. A lot of those cases, right? And so that's one thing that is a true concern. I talked about in one of my previous episodes too about the immigration factor that goes into all of this as well. They're cracking down on immigration and going really heavy on working on deporting and getting rid of a lot of immigrants in that case. And again, when you're doing sweeping changes like that, that has very real time impacts on our economy. Right. I talked to you in that previous episode about how there's a lot of immigrants who make up a large portion of the workforce in real estate and in construction. Right. And so if you have these sweeping changes to just move and deport all of these immigrants out of there, now they're going to be struggling to fill those positions. Right. There's a lot of people in the country who just aren't equipped or aren't prepared or simply don't want to fill those positions, right? And so you'll have a lot of these different job openings that they can't get filled, which means that it's going to require them to increase the price of their services because they have less labor to match a lot of these jobs that are taking place. And so when you mix that issue in with the tariffs, you're leaning towards a recipe for disaster. Now, we've heard the word recession a lot as well. One thing I always like to point out to people is that because 2008 is probably the most recent one that's heavy on our minds, people just assume that every recession is a housing recession as well. That is not always the case. Not every recession means that there's going to be a recession on housing where we're going to see these crashes and just these massive dips in the pricing. It's always a possibility, but it isn't a guarantee that that's going to be the case, even if we do end up going into a recession. And so it's important to keep that in mind. But again, it might be a lot of kind of just uncertainty and the people waiting on the sidelines. When people are looking at new construction properties that they're wanting to buy or looking at properties that are resale but have been fixed up, that plays a big factor into what they're looking for. The average buyer is dealing with finding options that are good for them or finding options that are at least affordable enough for them, right? There's always a supply and demand. And one of the biggest problems that we have consistently had over the last few years in real estate is a lack of inventory. And so if these tariffs make it more difficult or more expensive to build houses, that's going to rise the cost of that. And then also for people who are currently living in homes, if they decide that they want to renovate their kitchen or get a new roof or make major repairs or things to their house, if those jobs become more expensive, well, now are in a situation where they may not be able to list that home for a reasonable price for what it's actually worth because they've now invested twice as much as they were originally planning to get the house fixed up. Right. And so I've talked about this before, but when you're making updates and changes to your home, very rarely, almost never do you get a dollar for dollar return on whatever improvement you made, right? And so if you make a $40,000 improvement on your kitchen, that doesn't automatically mean that you're going to be able to get a $40,000 increase in that purchase price. That almost never happens, especially if you're selling in the short term, like a year or two after you made that renovation. It's usually going to take several years for you to be able to recoup that cost in just the overall value of the house. And if that $40,000 upgrade now turns into an $80,000 upgrade, well, now we may end up in a situation where people have made all these changes, they've done all these improvements on their home, they go to put it on the market and they realize, oh my goodness, the market doesn't value it as $80,000 more. And now I'm dealing with the struggle of trying to figure out whether or not I'm going to make enough from this sale to break even, or if I'm underwater on this house, right? That's a very real possibility that can happen if you have people who are dipping into home equity lines of credit, dipping into credit cards and everything like that to make these changes. And then finding out after the fact they're not going to be able to recoup those funds. And so it's a lot of different things that are going on. Me personally, I don't feel like the tariffs are the best way to move forward, but that's an argument for a debate for another day. But my biggest gripe with the way that this is currently taking place is that I don't feel like there has been a plan or a well-intentioned, thought-out improvement for what to happen in the short term. Right. One thing that was abundantly clear during last year's election is that Americans are suffering financially right now. Credit card debt is at a record high. It's higher than it's ever been. It's in the trillions number. Now, you have people who are struggling in every sense of the word. They may have jobs, right? We look at the jobs report and say, oh, well, all these people have jobs, but those jobs may not be the same income or the same rate or salary that they had from their previous one, right? And so it doesn't take a lot of that into effect. And there are so many different things with groceries, with cars, and so many different things that are higher than they've ever been before. And we're struggling to deal with that. And so for them to come in and say like, hey, in addition to the struggles that you're dealing with right now, we're also going to add this whole tariff headache onto things. I personally don't think that it's the right time to do that, especially if we don't already have the pieces in place to immediately insert to make that thing better. Right. They say, we're going to have to buckle up for some hard times ahead and don't look at your 401ks and everything like that. And that's all well and good if we were in an economy that everyone was doing well in, right? We were already struggling, and to add this on top of the burden that was already there, I think is just not the right time for that, if that was going to be the strategy. And so we'll see how this plays out. Again, the real estate market moves a lot slower in the way that they react to different things. And so we'll continue to keep an eye on. I'll continue to talk about this and let you guys know what I'm seeing on the ground in the marketplace right now. I haven't seen too many changes in it, but I guarantee you if this sticks around longer, we're definitely going to see the fruit of those decisions later on down the road. And so as always, feel more than free to reach out if you ever have questions. I'll talk to you all next week. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thanks.